Welcome to Making a Murderer, Rubberducky YouTube channel. So the researchers and I have presented this to you. Shotgun Wedding, the Christine Rudy murder. Christine Marie Lee Rudy laid to rest. All our research and work is dedicated to the memory of Christine Marie Lee Rudy. June 1984, death November 12, 2005, and her unborn son, Christopher Lee. Christine was one of the most notorious murders in Wisconsin history. At only 21 years old, she left this planet 6 months pregnant. Christine Marie Lee Rudy was born on June 19, 1984 in Hibbing, Minnesota. She was the daughter of Edward and Carol Zyatt Lee. In 1986, the family moved to Thorpe, Wisconsin, where she grew up and attended the area schools. She was a certified nursing assistant and enjoyed working with the elderly. She also worked at Grassland Dairy. She loved and enjoyed children and being in the outdoors, especially fishing. She was a member of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Thorpe. This is where Christine lived with her mother. Christine's best friend was Heather Tisler. They had known each other for many years, and Christine had been Heather's babysitter when they were very young. However, friends are not always who you think they are. This is Sean W. Rudy. In February 21st, 2000, he had possession of drug paraphernalia and obstruction of officer, followed by burglary, and then we have some child support orders. Then it gets serious. In June of 2002, meth and delivery and manufacturing. And then, November 18, 2005, Sean W. Rudy gets a felony possession for a firearm and is arrested. He also gets a charge for possession of drug paraphernalia. Now, his wife was actually missing at that time. And who was his wife? Well, we'll get to that. Let's talk about Sean's double life. He has an alias recorded on court records. He's not only Sean W. Rudy, he's Sean M. Oberle. And Mr. Oberle has charges as well. Carrying concealed weapons, retail of theft, bail jumping, possession with THC with intent, possession of methamphetamine. Not a very good guy already. Well, unfortunately, Christine becomes pregnant, and they have a shotgun wedding. Sean Rudy told authorities, "She begged me to marry her, and that's when I said, blanket. I went down to Shopko and bought a $20 ring or so. I wasn't ready for another child. I still ain't, but I mean that. All I could do is my best." And when he said that all I could do, not what I can do. Embedded confession right there. And what was found out later is he said, "To death do us part," before shooting his wife. This is where they lived. This was their apartment. They were in the door to the left, and they lived upstairs. There was a bar in the bottom part. But that wasn't all there was. This was a three-way love triangle. Let me introduce you to Heather S. Tisler, who's 18 at the time. Authorities say she was involved in a love triangle with Sean and Christine. A friend who visited Tisler and Sean Rudy at his parents' house said Tisler hated Christine Rudy with a passion. Allegedly, during one fight, Christine told her husband to divorce her and marry Heather. So much for best friends. Well, reports indicate that Sean routinely used and provided drugs, at times injecting his wife, who was pregnant, and Tisler with methamphetamine. And then they did a cross-state crime spree on the 3rd of November for 7 days. Well, a little more than that. A little over a week. It was reported by both Tesler and others that Christine stayed in the car while her husband and Tesler burglarized a Guttenberg, Iowa home. The three ran out of money for the trip on 11/10/05 and broke into the house to fund their travel. About $5,000 in jewelry, electronics, and guns were stolen from the home, according to the authorities. And you can see the map here. This is the trip that they took. Now, it's interesting. Sean Rudy later sold a 20-gauge shotgun to a friend on November 18th. According to police records, he was later pulled over by the Thorpe police around 1 a.m. because his rear window was covered with snow. That traffic stop led to the current charges of possession of drug paraphernalia and firearm as a felon. Good thing he didn't remember to clean off the snow. Well, along this whole path that they're taking, we've run into an interesting tale of Christine, who seeks refuge in the St. Mary's Church in Finmore, Wisconsin. And while she's there, we have what Sean expresses. He also told investigators he left his wife on a road in Crawford County. While he told authorities this occurred on November 8th or 9th, we now know it has likely happened late November 10th or early November 11th. Christine then walked about 8 miles to Finmore, where she went to St. Mary's Church and called her husband, who picked her up the next day. Finmore's mayor, Richard Rogers, began setting up for Mass at the church at 7:30 a.m. on Sunday, November 11th, when he spotted Christine sitting in the front pew. He says, "She was bent over, she had her head in her hands, and it looked as though she'd been crying." Rogers says, "We had Mass, and she did not move a muscle during Mass." After the services, Rogers approached Christine and asked her if everything was all right. While she appeared to be crying, she assured Rogers that her husband would be picking her up in about 15 minutes. But after a few hours later, Christine was still in the church hall. She told me that her husband had let her out of the car somewhere 10 or 12 miles out of Finmore. Rogers says, "She said she worked through Bluff area, and at one time she almost fell over the cliff. When she got out of the car, she took a stocking cap and a flashlight. She had on a very light jacket," Rogers says. Rogers says she seemed very distraught that morning, but by the afternoon her spirits had picked up, and she was looking forward to going back home. Rogers said she was gone when he looked for her that afternoon, and he assumed her husband had picked her up. In another interesting twist, Rudy told Rogers there had been another woman in the car with her husband, left the night before. She described the woman as a good friend. Well, Rudy is soon reported missing and makes national news. This is Nancy Grace. You got it. Anyway, she does make that program as well as CNN. Rudy had reported his wife Christine, 21, missing about 2 days after he said he dropped her off on a Clark County highway, MM, November 12th. He told authorities they had been arguing. Clark County authorities formally named Rudy a person of interest in his wife's disappearance during a January 20th press conference in Neillsville. Sean W. Rudy is being considered a suspect in the disappearance of his wife, Christine, Clark County Sheriff Louis Rancich said at the time. A witness calls police in November 1905. The case of Christine Rudy's death broke when J.C. M. Walters, 24, from Stanley, Wisconsin, called Stanley police on November 19th and said Sean Rudy had told her he had killed his wife. The news reported Sean Rudy and Tesler discussed a common story to tell the police after the shooting. but it appears the story fell apart due to Walter's questioning of Tisler on November 18th about Christine Rudy's disappearance. During the interview with police, Walters said, "Sean then told me he cut up the body and left it in the woods so some others would find her and give her a proper burial." Unsealed court documents said Sean Rudy told J.C. Walters, age 23 of Stanley, he killed his wife Christine soon after the shooting. Another woman, Heather Tesler, 18 of Thorpe, told Walters she was in the vehicle when the shooting took place, according to the documents. Sean Rudy told Johnson he had plotted several ways to kill his wife with Tesler. The case of Christine Rudy's death broke when J.C.M. Walters, 24 Stanley, called Stanley police on November 19th and said Sean Rudy had told her he had killed his wife. According to the criminal complaint, Sean Rudy made threats several times that he would kill his mother, Walters, and Tesler because they talked to authorities. Christine Rudy stayed in the car while her husband and Tesler burglarized a Guttenberg, Iowa home. The three ran out of money for the trip on November 10th and broke into the house to fund their travel home. Sean Rudy also confessed to Johnson that he had robbed more than 27 bars. Reports indicated that they had found human skull fragments on November 29, 2005, on Rogers Creek Avenue. The report indicates that your complaint began searching on the east side of Roger Creek Avenue at Highway MaM on November 29, 2005, at approximately 8:30 that morning. Your complainant located what appeared to be human skull fragments. They were located on the west shoulder of the roadway, approximately 200 yards north of Highway MaM. Your complainant also observed what he believed to be brain tissue in the ditch. And soon, body parts were found at Sean's mother's home. Now, this is a picture nowadays of what the place looks like. But it was Margie Nelson's home, and that was Sean Rudy's mother. As you can see, this is from March 12th, 2006. The shed on the left side of the photo is where Sean Rudy reportedly dismembered his wife's body after shooting her November 12th. Police also found a safe at this residence on Fairview Avenue, south of Stanley. The safe reportedly contained the casing of the shotgun shell Rudy used in the shooting. This is what they reported at the time. It remains unclear whether charred remains found at the home of Jeff and Margie Nelson, Sean Rudy's parents, is that of Christine Rudy. Cadaver dogs led authorities to a burn pile when they searched the area December 1st and December 2nd, according to court documents. Now the husband is named as a suspect on January 19, 2006. In the local papers report, the Sham was named as a suspect in his pregnant wife's disappearance Thursday morning by authorities, who said he allegedly shot, dismembered, and disposed of Christine M. Rudy's body before reporting her missing to police. Authorities said Thursday their investigation revealed that Sean Rudy, 23, allegedly shot his wife Christine, 21, on Roger Creek Avenue in the town of Butler and moved her body to another location to be dismembered. He later disposed of her remains in the Chippewa River near the Cobam Bridge in Chippewa County, authorities said. Christine Rudy was 6 months pregnant when she was reported missing. Authorities searched the Chippewa River on January 3rd, but no evidence was recovered, said Chief Deputy Jim Backus. Everything's pointing in that direction, he said. So, charges of double murder are registered against him. I'm having a hard time, you guys. It's just so hard to do these cases. He dropped his wife off in the woods. He drove away. He came back. He aimed a shotgun, and he said, "Until death do us part." And he shot his 6-month pregnant wife in the head on the road. That wasn't good enough. He left. He came back with a tarp with his lover, his mistress. They wrapped up her body. They drove 5 miles to his mother's home. He cut her body up. He took her body out of the garage, behind it, on the side of it, on the left side. And after dismembering her body, he threw her arms and legs and appendages in there. He put her torso in a can. He used hay bales. He covered the big can with a tarp. He used hay bales to stationize the barrel. Him and Heather Chisler, Sean Rudy, and her drove to a bridge called Coban Bridge, and they disposed of the torso over the bridge. Tesler explains she saw Rudy cut up the body. Now, it's interesting. This report says the defense is supported by the fact that Tesler witnessed Sean Rudy shoot and later dismember Christine Rudy's corpse. That Sean Rudy told Tesler to write goodbye letters to her family, and that Sean Rudy would not let Tesler out of his sight in the days after the homicide, the report said. However, Carol Lee, the mother of Christine, said Tesler lied to Thiessen and police because the day of the murder, her youngest daughter went over there later in the evening to visit Christine, and Sean left. It was just the two of them, you guys. She had all kinds of opportunity if it bothered her so much to go to the cops and say something. Tesler 20 of Merrill was convicted in Clark County. She only had to serve 9 months in jail and got 18 months probation. A felony charge of harboring a felon was dismissed. Ironic that she got 9 months. Now the torso was dismembered and dumped in this water. This is the Chippewa River, and that's the Coban Bridge. Sean and Christine Rudy were high on meth November 12th during the shooting along Roger Creek Avenue in the town of Butler. Sean Rudy was upset his wife was pregnant and using drugs, he said. Christine Rudy began to wig out, according to correct court records used for search warrants. Sean Rudy drove a short distance before returning to where his wife was sitting beside the road. Tesler told investigators Sean Rudy loaded a 12-gauge shotgun. When Christine Rudy looked at her husband, he said, "Till death do us part," then pulled the trigger. Tesler was in a car, but turned her head away before the shotgun fired. Tesler and Sean Rudy again drove away, but returned, wrapped Christine Rudy's body in a tarp, brought it to his house, in the shed there, and it wasn't his house, it was his mother's, but this is how it reported it. In the shed, Sean Rudy did that. And he put her arms and legs in corn bags, and he placed the appendage and the torsos in the garbage can, and he threw it in the Chippewa Valley River. But they burned all their clothes, and they burned some of Heather's furniture. Like, he helped her move out of her apartment after this, his lover, and moved her and burnt some of the stuff right there on the pile. So what does Tesler get? You got it. Like I said, 9 months in jail on May 8th, 2006. He said the witness stated that Christine Rudy's remains were put in the container and placed in the minivan. The container was held upright by the van by lodging hay bales around it. After driving the witness, which is Heather Tesler, to various locations in and around Cornell, investigators did in fact locate an area of the Coban Bridge, which a witness indicated might be the place the body had been dumped. At that location, investigators located an enormous amount of hay at the location on the bridge, which corroborated the witness' story. And so she was able to get a plea deal. Sean never sees trial. He gets 2 life sentences, and then he also gets 10 and I believe 18 years on top of that. No chance of parole. But what's interesting is what he said. According to a pre-sentence report, Rudy told the parole and probation agents that he felt he did the right thing in killing his wife so she wouldn't give birth to a possibly disabled child. And he wouldn't change anything. Zigwig said Thursday. Rudy alleged that his wife abused methamphetamines as he did, the prosecution said. Now the question is, do we trust the media or do we investigate? Let's look at this. Let's do a victim comparison between Christine and Teresa. They were both between 21 and 25 years old. Both are shot in the head. Both bodies are dismembered. Both bones have saw and cut marks. Both bodies are burned. The body parts are in multiple locations. Electronics recovered from burn barrel and pit at both murder sites. They both lived on the east side of Wisconsin and were traveling at the time of death. They were murdered within 12 days of each other, and pap smears were used for their DNA identification. You know, that gentleman agreement. And get this, Dr. Eisenberg was a bone expert, and I say expert used lightly. At first, she says that some bird bones were the fetus's bones and that the fetus had been cut out of Christine. Later, when they find the torso, the fetus is intact, and it shows that Eisenberg was completely wrong. What's interesting is, not only do we have Eisenberg in both cases, we also have Michael Steyer. Now he's the MD, and he performs both autopsies. What's questioning is why it was done in this order. So if you just did a quick look, January 13th, 06, who would you think that autopsy would be? Well, it was Christine Rudy's. And later that year, almost 4 months later, in May 2006, then he does Teresa Haubach's. Now, let's read the anatomic diagnosis of Teresa's. Number 1, numerous fragments of bones examined. Charred bone fragments consistent with fire effect. Multiple radiopaque objects identified radiographically. Detailed skeletal analysis conducted by Dr. Leslie Eisenberg, forensic anthropologist. Let's go over here and read this. 6 evidentiary containers bearing tissue fragments examined. Tissues examined within clear containers without removal from such. This is Christine's. See, they don't touch her stuff. Tissue fragments radiographed. Tissue fragments appear most consistent with human skull. Radiopaque and other dense particles consistent with bullet or fragments thereof not observed. For detailed skeletal analysis, refer to the report by Leslie Eisenberg. Now let's read their comments. Several containers of charred bony remains are examined. This is Teresa's. The exam consisted of gross examination as well as a radiograph exam. This is done in conjunction with forensic anthropologist Dr. Leslie Eisenberg. For details on the skeletal exam, refer to the forensic anthropologist report. Assuming the bony fragments are human and belonging to one individual, the individual is in a deceased condition. Let's go read Christine Rudy's comments on her autopsy. This limited exam of tissue bone fragments examined visually through evidence containers. The exam also includes radiography. No definitive bullet fragments are identified. The bony fragments appear most consistent with human skull. Assuming the fragments are from one individual, the person is likely to be in a deceased condition. Do you guys have questions? Because we have the same MO for the killer in both of the two girls. And what's really strange is they all died within less than 2 weeks of each other, and they all were on the east side of Wisconsin, within a short distance of each other, and they were all very young. Now my question is, why did they all have the name Marie for a middle name? And who killed them? Did Sean kill them all? If you didn't do the crime, you shouldn't do the time. Thank you. Stay tuned tomorrow night. We're going to bring to you Dr. Silkwin's DNA of Teresa and Christine Rudy's comparison. He will explain to us if we're looking at the same in both cases for DNA, and if the girls' bones match, their DNA results match, or if they are two completely separate people. Thank you. And again, all our work is dedicated to Christine Marie Lee and her unborn son.